Welcome, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Co-Girls on Air, a podcast exploring all things technology, female leadership, careers, education, and topics within the nonprofit sector. On this episode, we interviewed Dallas Knight, who is a combat veteran and former intelligence analyst, and now runs a platform dedicated to empowering and uplifting female combat veterans. So join Makayla and Dallas to hear more of her story. Welcome, Dallas. Thank you so much for joining us on Co-Girls on Air.
Thank you for having me.
Do you think you could start by just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I'm a mouthful, so get ready.
Wonderful.
My name is Dallas Knight. I started my career in the Army. I joined at 17, just 2 months prior to 9/11.
Oh, wow.
And after 6 years in a combat tour, I transitioned into the civilian space where I retrained as an intelligence analyst for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And I was exclusively assigned to the DEA there, and I worked in narcotics for about 10 years. And then I was recruited out by corporate America, IBM specifically, to come work and be a part of their team to help sell the software that I had been using throughout my career to put investigations and analysis together. And I've been in the tech space for the last 10 years.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you worked in your intelligence? What was that like?
Yeah, so we would gather information on narcotic organizations, narcotic trafficking organizations in Las Vegas, and we would put together enough information that the detectives and the agents and the officers could go then to the district attorney or the assistant federal attorneys and prosecute these organizations.
Wow. Thank you. And what about IBM? What was that like?
Well, that's where I like to say that I actually had my transition from military to civilian life. So about 10-year latency, because law enforcement is so similar to military in their structure and rules and regulations, and things are a lot more black and white versus corporate America where it's more gray space. So when I transitioned, I had some challenges around kind of finding my way in my space and then even feeling valid and worthy of the space. I didn't feel like initially that I had anything in common with this world. And when I started to understand that I could translate the skills that I had obtained and became efficient in through the military and law enforcement into more civilian terminology, I realized that I was absolutely more than qualified. But it's another male-dominated space.
Yeah.
So I was accustomed to that, but it was definitely a little bit different, challenging in some of the discriminatory, or even at one point I was harassed just for being a woman in the space. But otherwise, it opened a whole nother door for me to learn and to grow and expand my knowledge and expertise, not only in technology, but I was working with commercial organizations and industries that also had investigative teams. And being in law enforcement and military for so long, I kind of had these like blinders on where I thought, the only people who were investigating bad guys were fit into those organizations. And what I came to realize is that most commercial organizations and big corporations also have investigative teams. They have special investigative units. They have executive protection teams. And so they're doing a lot of the same or similar things that law enforcement, military, and government agencies are doing as well.
Oh, wow. So would you say we were very prepared for that, having been in law enforcement for so long?
Once I started to see the parallels and just be open to learning and asking questions, it allowed me to take my background and marry it up with what I was learning. And I could find that similarity and resonation with what they're talking about. And then I was able to also kind of validate where I came from and use those as examples in their work.
Yeah, especially with the male-dominated aspect of it, having already been in that, to go into more of that. I'm glad you were already prepared. So can you talk a little bit more about what you do now? currently?
Yeah, so I'm the executive vice president for Blue Fusion Technologies. It's a smaller tech company. It once was, or I guess it still is, a business partner of IBM. So after about 5.5 years with IBM, they love to move people around. I didn't love where I got moved. I'm very much a stick with what I'm passionate about thing. It's easier to, work 40, 60, 80 hours a week when you're passionate about those things. So I kind of put my feelers out there, and I was approached by Blue Fusion, their COO, and he actually approached me and said, we're not really sure where to put you in our organization. We just know that you would be an asset to our organization. So why don't you do some brainstorming and come to us and how you think that you would contribute? So it challenged me in a way where a lot of times I feel, especially as women, we minimize our skill set, or we minimize what we're capable of, or we look at check boxes. And if we don't check all the boxes, then we like to say that we're not qualified for that. Mm-hmm. And that I kind of flipped that on its head and said, okay, well, what do I want to grow into? So instead of what check boxes do I already check, I said, what check boxes do I want to check?
Oh, interesting. That's a really good strategy.
Yeah.
So did you always want to go into that field, or
no? If you would have asked me 20 years ago if I was going to work in the technology field, I would have said absolutely not. No, I always knew that I wanted to work in law enforcement in some capacity. When I was 17, I wanted to actually be an agent. When I became a mother, I decided that I wanted to help from more the comfort of a cubicle inside of air-conditioned office. But I still was supporting law enforcement in that way. Through my tenure there, I became very proficient in the software that we were leveraging. And I was the one that would raise my hand and say, I want to be certified to teach this, or I want to go and become an expert in this. And, I want to go to this conference and I want to speak about use cases of which we've leveraged this technology to further the investigation. So again, just kind of putting myself out there and expanding and networking and understanding. And when I came to realize, all these different tools and technologies and how they played such an instrumental part in furthering investigations from even just a speeding things up standpoint, I was very intrigued and I wanted to learn more about it. So more recently, yes, I'm, an executive in this company and I help more so from a leadership level, but I've also had the extreme privilege of taking all of my background and helping our dev team specifically design our patented technology that exists today.
Oh, yes. Can you talk a little bit more about how you've helped them specifically?
Yeah. So, they had developed a technology that was a plug-in to an investigative platform. So if you've ever watched any old cop show or movie where they put the bad guy's picture on a cork board and then they draw yarn, from one guy to the next and to this car to show how they're all connected. There's technology that does that. So you have it in digital form and then you have all of the information of how you've drawn those conclusions living on the back end. So Blue Fusion was a way to reach into the different data sources because organizations have upwards of 10 to 20 different data sources that they're tapping into at any given time. So it's a way to tap into those data sources simultaneously. And so this was bolted into a technology. Now, as comes with organizations and corporations, that partnership was severed. And I kind of threw it out there one day with our CTO. And I said, what if Blue Fusion was its own platform and it stood on its own 2 feet? And so we just started brainstorming and I literally just poured onto a piece of paper, putting my analyst hat back on and said, if I was to design the perfect technology, what would it look like? What would it do? What would the capabilities be? How would it enable me? How would it help me? And so I just poured that all into a paper, basically turned it over to the development team and said, can you guys make this happen? Yeah. And they went to work. And so I'm not involved in the coding aspect of it, but we have some really brilliant developers and interns that work with us. And they were able to take a lot of my hopes and dreams and wishes, if you will, and turn it into reality. And then it's this give and take relationship where they come to the table, they show it to me, and I say, okay, well, what about this? Or can we speed up this? Or can we subtract that? And then they go back to work. So it's been a really great relationship. And then in turn, we're able to provide this to a community that really is impacting the entire nation, let alone the world.
Yeah, for sure. So backing up a little bit, you talked about wanting to go in and check all these boxes for yourself.
Yeah.
What were some of those goals that you were working towards?
Yeah. So I wanted to be in a leadership position. I hadn't had that yet. And so I wanted to be able to have a team because I had been a mentee many times, and it was so rewarding to learn all of this knowledge and wisdom from those that had already, walked that beaten path. And I felt like I wanted to return that favor. I wanted to be able to take everything that I had been through, good, bad, and indifferent, and be able to pass that down, a generation or two. And I didn't feel at that time I was going to be able to do so unless I was put into a leadership position.
Right.
And so that was absolutely one of the check boxes that I didn't necessarily have yet, but I put out there and said I knew that I could grow into it.
No, that's wonderful. So what were some of your resources or mentors that you had leading up to this that really helped you?
Girl, I have a mentor for everything. And I would highly advise that all of you have mentors for every aspect in your life. I'm everything that from being a mother to being a speaker to an author to a podcast to my career in software development to leadership, all of the things. Anyone who's kind of walked that path before me, I embrace their wisdom and lessons learned, and I always look for that opportunity to learn from them.
Yeah. What would you say is an important personality trait that somebody would have to have going into this position that you have now, or looking for mentors?
I think a personality trait that would be really great is just to have an open mind. A lot of times we get stuck in our ways, or we're really stern on our thoughts and feelings. And a lot of times that's based on our experience. But you're going to have a different experience than me. Right. And with that, you bring something to the table that even though you're significantly younger than me, I could get value from. So instead of having, for this example, having this persona where I'm like, well, I'm older and wiser than you, there's nothing you can teach me, I would approach the situation and say, well, you have lived a different dynamic than I have. You absolutely have something to teach me, and I want to learn from you. So I think just having an open mind to be able to learn and embrace everybody's experiences around you is not only going to allow you to grow as a leader, but it's also going to show those around you that you're open to their interpretation, their thoughts, and their opinions. Yeah,
no, for sure. So, can you talk a little bit more about what a day in your life looks like now?
Yeah. So
After growing into this position so much?
I work from home, and I have since 2014. So from 2014 until 2020, it was not the norm to work from home. And so, when like my kids would come home during summer school or what have you, or, a dog barked, I always had to like explain myself or apologize and all of those things. But now it seems to be more the norm. But my company is headquartered in the East Coast.
Oh, okay.
So I more or less operate on East Coast time. I, get up and I go to my office in my home, and I check through a lot of emails. There's a lot of spam out there, and try to get through that. And I, am very privileged where I get to balance home work life right from the comfort of my home. But we balance. So I look after our marketing team as well as our sales team, and then client success.
Okay.
So our work hand in hand with our marketing director in our communication through LinkedIn or social media or our email campaigns and talking to our customer base. And then I oversee our sales team, where we're actively pursuing clientele. And then our customer success team, where we have gained a client and we're wanting to make sure and maintain that customer satisfaction.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So since you've been working from home, how has that been, raising kids? Can you tell me a bit how you've done that?
Yeah, it's a balancing act. And I think that's women in general, right? Like, we are multitaskers naturally. We can do it. And so it is a balancing act. And I try to time block. I think that's a helpful thing for me because I see a shiny object and I go towards it a lot of times. So I try to time block and I say, if I'm not in an active meeting, I'll say for the first 30 minutes of my day, I'm going to get through my emails. And that's all I'm going to do. If I have to turn my phone on silent or do not disturb or what have you, I say, okay, for 30 minutes, I'm doing this. And so I try to do those types of tasks throughout my day where I'm able to get everything that I need to be done for that day without feeling overwhelmed, but also trying not to get distracted.
Yeah, well, that's really good. Yeah, and overall, you've had a really busy career.
Yeah.
And so that's a good strategy to have raising kids. And
yeah.
No. So can we switch a little bit more over to your cybersecurity, what you know of it? Where do you see that going with AI in the picture now?
Well, there's obviously a lot of talk about AI lately.
Mm-hmm.
And like most technology, it can be a great, amazing, positive asset, but it can also be detrimental in organizations all the way down to the individual person.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just being aware and cognizant of what it is and how you interact with it, especially the younger generations, they think that, what happens on the internet or between two people through a text message or through an application is going to remain there. But the thing is everything that goes through the internet is captured and archived. Mm-hmm. Everything. It doesn't matter if you deleted it or if it's an application that says, oh, it only is there for 5 seconds and then it's gone. I promise you, because I've subpoenaed the information in my law enforcement career to get it. So it's all there. So I caution you to be aware of what you put out there and what you share. And I don't care how trustworthy the person is or how in love you might be. Everything is documented and everything is archived and can be brought back to you. And then with that, you have people and organizations who will leverage that information to coerce you into things. And that, again, is from an organizational level all the way down to an individual person. We heard about the things that were going on with young men being coerced into sending money because of pictures that were being threatened to be released. And so, that's at a person level. And then you have huge corporations who have their entire infrastructure locked down and being asked to, turn over millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. So it's, again, cognizant awareness, understanding what is sensitive information or images, and being aware of where you house that and who you give access to.
Yeah, for sure. And we've actually included some bits about cybersecurity in our curriculum. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you'd add to little girls who may not understand all about how the internet works, how to be safe with that other than just being mindful?
Yeah. It's a hard subject to kind of fine tune for the younger population. But I think just kind of going back to understanding that whatever you do on a phone, a tablet, a gaming system is free for all. So whatever you do, you need to act as if the entire world is standing at your window looking at it with the blinds open. So if you can treat your behavior and your interaction in that manner, then you're probably going to be pretty safe about it. But just be cautious and be very aware of who you interact with, and just know that there are lots of people out there who have ill intention and who do want to take advantage. And the internet is like opening all your doors and windows in your home and going to bed at night and hoping that no one comes in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Do you have any last closing words before we wrap up here?
No, honestly, it was an honor to come in and share with you. Lately, I feel like I've been talking more about my military career and my book and the podcast and everything I'm trying to do from a nonprofit stand. So It's a privilege to talk to young women who are pursuing the technology realm. I absolutely love that we are empowering girls to embrace a skill that is otherwise not necessarily encouraged for our gender.
Right.
And like, let's go.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was an honor to have you on, and we'll have to continue this conversation again someday.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode. Next week on Co-Girls on Air.
There were so many options, like there was computer science, there was electronics, and there was electrical engineering. And then I was someone, as I mentioned, who liked physics, and physics has a lot of semiconductor stuff in it, and I was someone who was impressed by the amount of impact that semiconductor had, and I wanted to get into that field. And that's why I decided that, okay, I'll choose electronics engineering in particular.